Hello everyone, we are here with Ben Wilson. He is from Victoria, Canada, and he works at Workday as a senior software development engineer there. So yeah, thank you for being here, Ben, as a judge to the Moonshot Hackathon. We are
Very
waiting.
well. I'm honored.
Yeah, we are waiting to hear like a lot of insights from your end, how things work there and how, like a lot of things to include. So let's take one at a time. I'll
Sounds
start
good.
with uh the agenda. We are here, the agenda of the hackathon. So one is like to so Rocket works for the works for two ends, and the first is like for the students who are from different types of colleges and different backgrounds who are into web development and developers software development field. So we don't emphasize on the colleges people are into. So we want to start with the academics. So how were your academics, and what do you think your academics played a huge role in the starting of your career?
Well, yeah, this is a tough question. It was a while ago for me, but I would say, overall, not very much. And it sounds like I'm saying it's not important, and it's not. I'm not saying that. But I think the most important part was sort of having the passion for our industry that we have. That was certainly the driving factor for me. I mean, I'm going to kind of date myself here, but I started in 1984 on an 8-bit Commodore 64, which is I don't know if you guys have even seen one of those, but never looked back really. I mean, I was young, right? And my father introduced me to technology. He was an electronics officer in the Navy, and at the time, digital electronics on the satellite navigators were first starting to come out. He's like, "Hey, take a look at this. This is the stuff that we're beginning to work with." So it was great. I loved it. I think so. By the time I was in university and high school, I'd already been coding for a few years and already had a few projects under my belt. I mean, really minor stuff, but stuff for small companies. And that experience really propelled me through first and second year university. And I did engineering. And it's only until you get to the latter stages when it becomes more theoretical that you're like, oh yeah, like this is going to be really helpful for my career moving forward and stuff I can build on. But I think then, in the way the Canadian engineering programs work is we have, in the US, they call them interns. In Canada, they're called co-op students. And what that means is cooperative education. So in Canadian engineering program, it's mandatory that you do one academic term and then you go and do an industrial term. And then it just alternates until you graduate. So our engineering programs last a little longer, but you end up with a ton of experience. And because unlike the US, where interns are often unpaid, we actually pay. So you can fund yourself through university quite well and end up with some experience, which is great because really, I think when you come to your first interview after you graduated, it's mostly about experience. Like by the time you get somebody like me, like our engineering team, where you're qualified, you've got some of the skills that we need, and we're just trying to determine whether we can work with you, how quickly you can learn, and more of your social and communication skills. Of course, there is a little bit of a tech test, but yeah, I mean, at tech interviews, I've never been asked about my grades, and they're not perfect by any means, but they're not terrible either, right? So, and again, it's like I'm not saying it's not important because it is, but overall it's been less of an emphasis. I do think, though, one caveat I'd say that if your intended field is more maybe theoretical in nature, maybe like machine learning is a good example, up and coming field, then perhaps there is more of an academic and research bent to it. In my case, it's more like standard line of business application, maybe almost being like a plumber, but for data, right? Pumping data from here to here and changing it a little bit and storing it here and that kind of stuff, right? But yeah, So important, but once you get your first job and you get some experience, you'll not be asked about it again.
Great. Thank you. So one other thing we want to get into is like your roadmap, like how did it had like starting like take it as an intro, where did, as you were telling that you are introduced to this tech like way before in your life than compared to any other person. So how did it went, like a string attached, like from your first job, how it was, and then the strings from there.
Oh, like experience from early, like really early on in the career.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as it turned out, one of the first languages I picked up was C, and C was becoming a standard in sort of the early to mid 1980s. And unfortunately, it's one of the languages that persists, and we still see the C family of languages throughout our industry now. So that I couldn't really have picked, or I didn't pick. It was chosen for me. The father was like, learn. So that's what I did, right? So I learned that. And that ended up being a tremendous advantage. So moving from I never actually got into Java until I came to Workday. So use Kotlin. But yeah, it was definitely an advantage. I think in many ways it's a bit harder now, because when you're starting up, there's so many choices of languages to pick. So it's almost like scripting languages weren't really a thing. I mean, I guess I did start with BASIC, right? So that's a interpreted language of in those days. But your choices were sort of like BASIC and C. There were a few others here, maybe Pascal. I don't know if you guys remember that one, but they were the two big ones. But now look at the choices that you have. So it depends really more on your fields, and you definitely have to make a conscious choice between a compiled language and an interpreted scripting language, which might depend on your field. If you're more front-end orientated, then your choice of JavaScript and TypeScript is obvious. If you're more into machine learning, then as your scripting language, probably Python. That would be great to get started and carry you forward. Our ops team is also big into Python as well. So if you're into ops, DevOps, then maybe that's a good, yeah.
Awesome. So that's great. Like you have clearly covered like a lot of picked up on the way, I guess. The every technology you have like keep on like updating. That's like really great to hear. So can you give a small intro of like what you do at Workday? I mean, I have seen myself in your LinkedIn bio. It was like so crisp and like you do like a lot of stuff. So I would like the other people to hear from you.
Yeah, so I'll sort of work backwards from Workday. I've only been with Workday for 3 years. Yeah, 3 years now, and it's the first large corporation I've ever worked for. I've always done smaller startups in the past, and I've got some themes on that later on in the question. And it's been really great. So I joined as a senior software development engineer, and on the knowledge base team. And our knowledge base product is, if you've ever used Confluence, it's an add-on that you can add to the Workday package. So Workday is human resource management, HCM, human capital management, and finance and accounting, right? Which sounds incredibly dull, but as the HCM industry pivots more from a consumer grade UI experience, we're adding some of these products to improve the concept of employee experience. So employees don't want some ugly application from Oracle. I'm going to pick on Oracle because as you probably, if you know anything about the history of of Workday and Oracle, they're deadly enemies. And the reason is because Oracle took over PeopleSoft, and our current CEO, Anil Bhusri, he and Dave Duffield got kind of frozen out. They said they decided to take their ball and go and start another company, which was Workday. And they wanted to start it with a completely different culture to Oracle. So if you could think of it in terms of maybe Intel and AMD, both of which I've worked at as a contractor, and the company culture couldn't be more different. So for example, Oracle is definitely Intel, and Workday is much more the AMD kind of company culture. Just a quick sidebar on Intel and AMD. It's an interesting comparison because they make a product that is really the same. It has the same input-output characteristics, but the process that the teams arrive at to produce their CPUs couldn't be more different. AMD is much more open to experimentation and risk-taking, and Intel is much more corporate, sort of more of a militaristic sort of structure. Nobody wants to make any mistakes. So, I mean, some people thrive in that environment. It wasn't for me. But yeah, I just wanted to sidebar in that one. I couldn't, yeah, I used to, so I'll get to why I ended up at Intel and AMD shortly. So yeah, knowledge-based product, think of it as a complement. So we have React on the front end, we have Kotlin and Spring MVC in the middle. And then finally, Workday has its own proprietary, I guess, back-end system of record called OMS. And that's our data module, which handles all of our data storage requirements and moving data between, as we call them, tenants, which are basically customers. And it allows us, the OMS system allows us to, unlike other HCM systems, which might have separate customized versions for each client, we have the idea of having one code line for everything. So everything is hosted by us, and there's only ever one version. So, you know, a customer never gets completely out of date with the current system and then has a big migration, unlike other systems which are hosted by the customers themselves. Ours is all hosted by us and controlled by us, and always upgraded to the latest. Yeah, so that's been great. Working with the bigger companies. I'm a Scrum Master for one of the teams right now. Our teams are quite small, maybe 4 devs, a product manager, and a QA. Yeah, it's a small team kind of structure. We almost feel like a startup inside a bigger organization that way, which is nice. But before that, I was in the startup world. So because I used to live in the UK, I had a lot of connections in the UK startup world, and I was living in Victoria, but contracting internationally. So the company that I was at before, the 2 companies I was at before were to do with healthcare and pharmaceuticals. So at about 2009, I joined a startup bringing over some IP from a previous company with me, intellectual property from a previous company, and that was geared around clinical trials. So and specifically replacing the pen and paper systems and the PDAs, like personal digital assistants, that used to use to collect data on patients during clinical trials, with the concept of bring your own device and complete the patient-reported outcome questionnaires on your Android or your iPhone. And that was kind of like the revolution at the time. The medical industry is very, very slow to change, and it's very hard to get started in that industry. But once you do, it's also a lot less competitive than the consumer space as well, because there's a high bar to entry with requirements and quality procedures. But once you're in, you're in. And so once we convinced the likes of Pfizer and GSK that our product was going to be compliant with the various medical regulations, US FDA and numerous others around the world, that really took off, and that ended up being my first kind of successful startup I was involved with, and that agency did eventually sell to a US company called ERT. So I was with them briefly, but again, I was a bit fearful of large companies at the time, and I think that was because of my experience with some of the negative culture of larger corporations. But it really depends on the company. I think you have to take it by case basis that way. So yeah. Previous to that, I had a rather disaster. It was started out good, and then it kind of went bad. But I was able to with the startup, which was around ringtones and full track downloads. That one went great until the iPhone came out in 2007 and kind of ate our lunch. But some of the technology was applicable from the mobile phones of the day to bring across to the medical startup. And then my first job out of university was in semiconductor. So for that one, I was young. I didn't have any families to take care of, so I was able to travel all around the world to like Asia and Europe and visit the likes of Intel and AMD. And it was to do with equipment health monitoring. So it's kind of a wide thing from sort of on the ground engineering, variety of languages, ranging from from C, PHP, Perl, JavaScript, C#, Kotlin, all these sort of tools in my toolbox to where I am now. So I am more of a generalist, I guess, than a specialist in any one field, which is sometimes a good thing. At Workday, I have lots of real specialists that I can lean on, and in a more senior position, you realize that you can't be an expert at everything. But it's sort of more all about the people you know and you can rely on to call on if you're not sure, right?
Awesome. That's an extensive one. Have picked up like a lot of stuff, like a lot of startups. So yeah, regarding getting into the startups or getting into like any company, so you are telling that you built like a lot of side projects being in the college itself. So how did that help you land a job in the starting of your career? Like, did it make a lot of difference compared to who didn't have that actual practical exposure before getting out of the college? Did it add any advantage to your profile?
I think it did, because I remember the first one I did. Yeah, this is kind of a funny story. The first one I did, it was to do with printing like shipping labels on one of the old dot matrix printers running on MS DOS, right? So in the UIs back in the day, there you used to have to kind of roll your own sort of like windowed text kind of UIs. So I did that, and it worked. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool if I just made it a little bit faster? The PCs of the day were rather slow, and it would be a little bit cool if it was a little bit faster. So I'm going to rewrite the UI layer in machine code instead, and talk directly to the graphics card and the hardware at the time, just for the tech stuff, which actually made quite a difference. And that was great, except when the customer ended up running it, they ran it on one of the older generation graphics cards, because they had back in the day, there was VGA, EGA, CGA, and they have different hardware address locations than a VGA card. And so it completely fell over, and I was kind of left red faced trying to demonstrate it to this. I mean, I was only like 16 or 17 at the time. And I think what what that taught me is like, yeah, optimization and cool stuff is great, but you gotta actually make it correct before you make it fast, right? So more of an incremental process. So that lesson I kind of took very seriously. But also that's kind of a funny one, but the person I was working with, we did this project together, and then years later we ended up forming a startup together, right? So we learned how the other person, how to work together with a key connection that made a tremendous difference later on in your life. So it was more, so although the experience was great and I did learn some technical things, it was more about the connections that I made, I think, in that time. Yeah, which ended up being the more advantageous thing later on.
Yeah, the connections are everything, especially even in nowadays when things are like working on global stuff, like every connection matters. So yeah, glad you brought that point. So yeah, the next one. What is your advice to someone who is starting out the ladder in this field? Like, what is the one advice you would give them?
Well, we just talked about connections, and I think that would be my number one is building your connections with people, both junior and senior. So at the time when my friend and I produced this silly little application all those years ago, we were both junior, right? And I think maybe there's a tendency to try to connect us with senior people. But here's a newsflash for you: eventually, junior people become senior, right? So do have a broad connection, and you never know what direction other people will go in their careers. So the juniors and seniors are really important. I think your presentation skills are really important, but both slides and verbally. And it's, unless you have a chance to speak often, which I kind of do at Workday, they are, and I've become, although I'm naturally a more introverted person, I had to really practice more speaking in public without getting too nervous. So your presentation skills are really, really important, because like I said before, by the time if you get an interview with a large tech company, they already know that you're qualified and you've got some or most of the skills. It's these hard to measure soft skills that are often the determining factor. How you present yourself. You can practice the so-called elevator pitch, just sort of making your point clearly in 30 seconds, which actually I feel that I haven't actually done a very good job, because I was kind of waffly earlier on, so apologies for that. Don't burn your bridges either. I mean, we're all going to have times in our career where things are not going well, and you're maybe tempted to, quit in a fit of pique, or in a huff, if you will. So make sure you always handle yourself in an honest and straightforward way, because you never know when these people in our industry, particularly if you're in a small vertical like healthcare, or the clinical trials was particularly small, you're going to run into the same people over and over again. So your reputation is really, really important. Connect with your older connections as well. So once you've connected to somebody, check in with them once in a while. Don't let them go stale. I think it's important to nurture the older connections. There's a couple of people in my life that have come back, and I've stayed connected to, and they've been a tremendous help, and I hope I've been a tremendous help to them over the years. But I wouldn't have had that unless I checked in with them once in a while. Say, hey, how are you doing? Let's go for coffee, or let's go for a beer, or something like that. Help others succeed as well, right? So it's not all about you. I mean, it is all about you, but you can look at it two ways. Like, helping others succeed certainly makes me feel good, but it does have a habit of coming back as well, because people will remember that. And when you are having tough times, they'll help you. So eventually, through a complicated chain of karma, you will get it. It will come back to you.
Great, great. So, uh, in the perspective of like learning technical skills in the beginning of the career, so I think like a lot of the people in the beginning of the career are like so confused about the skills they have. They if they want to get into a like a new stack, or just in the questioning of themselves, like is this enough? In that perspective, what do you advise them for the people who are like just starting out?
Yeah, so you're not sure, let's say you've heard about this great new stack and you want to, yeah, you want to learn more about it, but you're not sure if you're gonna like it. So what I will generally do is start with the smallest, simplest hello world example. Just get that up and running as job one. But that's really not enough because you won't really learn the limitations unless you do something more than that. This is actually the hardest part, is not actually learning it, it's actually picking a problem to solve with it. So it could be anything, that something that you want to maybe automate around your house, or some piece of something that would be really cool tool that you might design, that would involve maybe a front end, or I mean, even if it's just like, going and, let's say you wanted to, I don't know, learn Python, and a particular problem you had is you wanted to be able to scrape your favorite shows from BitTorrent or something, right? That's probably a really good project to do, because you will learn a lot about how to connect to various other web services, present the data. Maybe you end up presenting it, maybe you end up presenting it in React somehow. Maybe you end up using Python to store the results in a database and presenting them, right? So you could really solve a particular problem that you have, or something your family has personally. And just, it doesn't have to be a tremendous project. It could be a little utility even, but something that's actually real and steps beyond the hello world. And then it does give you something, as I know some of the other questions were orientated about your portfolios. So if you're just starting out and the project goes really well, post it on GitHub, document it, and then it gives you something to talk about in depth at an interview, which can make up for a lack of experience if they're trying to determine whether you, how you think, and what your interests are.
Got it, got it. So, what are some early setbacks later gave you a tremendous advantage? They seemed like a setback when you were there, but turned into an advantage later on. Like, are there any such moments?
Yeah, quite a few, and they turned out okay. But at the time they were kind of scary. So the full track download and mobile phone startup that I was in, they eventually did go bankrupt. I mean, who's gonna compete with iTunes and right? So so then I was out a fair bit of money that way, and I realized that I wasn't going to get it, and that was kind of scary. I had a young family at this time, right? So it's kind of a scary time to be in that situation. What I could do though is negotiate rights to some of the IP, so some of the intellectual property. So that's what I did, and I brought them with me to the medical startup, and then some years later, that really paid off when when we were able to cash out of that. So rather than sort of beating my head against the wall about like, I need to get this cash out of this company, they had none to give, right? Salvage did to kind of change the rules of the game. What can they do what can we negotiate that's going to be advantageous as a future investment? So it is important, I think, when you're in these difficult times, to take a step back and think about your overall strategy, rather than just maybe the tactics of the current situation, and think about what you could do, and where you could eventually win, even if it's a long-term thing.
Yeah, the thinking about the long-term thing, I think it's one thing not everyone thinks about. Everyone is like to the moment, like mostly, but I think sometimes trying to play the long-term game, I think that will change a lot of stuff. So yeah, that's a huge point there. I have experienced it myself, like the long-term thing, the perspective itself changes a lot of things we see even like in the present, the actions we commit to in the next few minutes. So yeah, that's a great one. That's a great one. So yeah, coming back to the next one. What is the one thing you have learned throughout your experience that you feel you are going to apply that everywhere in your career from now on, like throughout the life?
Oh yeah, yeah. I just think about this one. It's actually kind of a tough one because it's as you advance in your career, your perspective changes. But I think the one thing that's been a constant is valuing the skills of others and learning from them. And you might think, well, in the senior position, you probably got all the skills and you have nothing left to learn, and that's really not true. Like whether it be from other seniors or increasingly what I'm finding is many of the junior engineers are so sharp in some particular areas. I'm learning from them. It's almost embarrassing, to be fair. And rather than being, I suppose, afraid of that or um, not wishing to look out of date, ask them. They'll be happy to relate their skills to you. You'll learn something, and they'll also ask you about your experience as well. So I think that just because you don't understand something, you don't know something, it doesn't mean that it doesn't have value. And I have encountered a few engineers with that attitude. It's not my thing. It's garbage, right? I'm not gonna I don't want to learn that, but I feel it's really important throughout your entire career to have an open mind. And even if it's a technology or a concept that you're just listen, have them try to convince you. You know, it may not agree in the end, but you'll probably learn something and get a different perspective.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great one. It's again, I think it's like related to the hunger of like learning things, at least like what are around you. I think that will make a difference because once you get into that, you will stay up to date with what's happening at your work, like in every stage, and with everyone. So I think that will make a difference when you get into the senior, level of working, because you have perspective on everything. You know the least things that needs to be done when something goes wrong. I think that is the difference. I think that is the difference that will make from the executioner engineer to a strategist engineer. So yeah, learning, knowing the perspectives and like being open about learning even from the juniors, I think, yeah, that's a great takeaway.
Yeah, totally. Often the senior people, or if there's a problem, often the senior people are called in right away, and we may not know the details. But through these relationships that we have with other people, both junior and senior, we're able to connect the dots and bring people together and to solve the problem more quickly. Whereas I think a lot of the juniors don't know where to start, and we don't always know where to start either. But we know that we have to start somewhere, so we'll just pick a point and start, and then kind of build out the graph from there with our connections. And it's not always the optimal path, but usually we get there.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. That sounds so great. So one daily routine you thought you wish you had like started early on, which like terribly helps your growth in the career.
Yeah, great question. And I think it's get up and move. So don't just sit there, looking at the screen. Like if you're stuck with a problem, get up, go for a walk if you can. It I think I find it amazing how often I've been stuck on a problem, and then once I convince myself to get up, which doesn't always easy, you go for a walk, and within about 10 minutes, blood is moving around, there's more blood to the brain. The ideas are coming really quickly, and you're excited to come back and work on a problem. Whereas if you had just sat there, you would be frustrated and miserable and have made no progress. It sounds easy, right? So like it it
Yeah.
sounds easy, but it's really hard to if your ego takes over and you're like, I'm going to solve this problem by this time, and I'm angry with myself because I cannot solve this problem. It's actually really hard to get up. And if you hear that voice in your head, that kind of voice talking to you, that hear voices, oh, a great guy to get for like for the hackathon. But what I mean is like that voice in your head that is thinking, oh, you'll never solve this, you won't do this, you should go and quit and become like I don't know, a garbage man or something. I don't know. It's time to get up. It's time to get up, go for a walk, and then you'll solve the problem probably within 10 or 15 minutes of returning. And you'll be like, wow, this is the best industry ever. Like, I love working this, right? But that would be my top tip for productivity. Also, something that took me a while to learn is try to understand, your natural flow. Like some of us are night owls, some of us are morning people. I never used to be a morning person, but as I've got more older, I've realized that I'm most productive in the morning. So stuff that's really challenging, I try to do in the morning, and I try to set sort of a defined goal for a particular chunk of work. And I just try not to start something new when I'm more or less at the end of my productive time, because it can sometimes what will happen is if you do that and it doesn't go well, it can end up really bleeding into your family time or your evening, and you may have difficulty sleeping. I mean, I would have difficulty sleeping but if you hadn't started it, and you'd started at the beginning of your productive time the next day, you would be just as far, perhaps further ahead, and you wouldn't have had a poor sleep and maybe poor relationships because you're kind of grouchy because you were thinking about it all night, right? So try it's more like self-awareness. You don't have to do everything right away, and know when to take a break, know when to start things, know when to put things down. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great tip, especially like bleeding things from one to the other. I have experienced. I'm pretty sure everyone experiences that at any moment. It's just about the awareness that when to stop, where, and not to take that baggage to the next thing. That actually drains both of the activities. So yeah.
Yeah, and you can end up taking twice as long just because you tried twice as hard, right?
Yeah. You'll be drained at the end of the day because you just spoiled the both of the activities. That's an add-on frustration from that. So yeah, true. That's great. That's great. So the next question. What is something you believed like 5 years ago that you had to unlearn to get to where you are today? Like, what is that you believed something like very much 5 years back and it doesn't
Yeah,
make.
it is actually, it was very clear for me when I saw this question. And when I was working for much smaller companies, it's possible for a person to understand pretty much everything in the company's technology stack. So all the technologies they're in use, and are competent with all of them. And if you are joining a large organization like Workday, I initially found it really, really stressful. It's like, it's so huge, and it's like, oh, I have to understand this and this and this. And I think that's a mistake. Even at a senior level, I don't think there is one person in the entire company that understands all the technologies that are in play at Workday, for example. Now, just because they don't understand them, it doesn't mean they're not aware of them. So I think the better approach is have a good high-level understanding of the big components. And Workday has this tremendous kind of, I call it a map. It almost looks like a city. You can zoom in on it and you can see all the different technology areas. And the part that I work on, knowledge base, is this tiny little building in the big infrastructure. But it's important to have an awareness of these other services that are available to you. And more importantly than the awareness, I suppose, is who to connect to. So building on the theme of connections that we talked about, as we transition back from all of working at home for the pandemic and back to more of a work in the office. Sit at a different table, you know, ask somebody you haven't seen before, what team do you work on? And gradually you will illuminate different parts of this, of the technology stack. And then you can pull in these people as a senior engineer to say, oh yeah, you were talking about that, you can explain how that works. I think that might really work for our team. So yeah, don't feel bad if you can't understand everything at a large org. But try to build the connections of people that do, so you can lean on them as and when you need to.
Great, great. So follow up to this, you said that before Workday, you worked in like small startup companies, right? So how did the transition happen? Like, how did that lift happen, starting from like the small company to the Workday? I did MBA in HR, so I know a lot about Workday. I used it for one of the companies I worked earlier. So I know how huge a Workday is and how huge companies use it, like Google and everyone. So how did that lift happen, coming from a small companies to the Workday? Yeah, what played all along?
Okay, so this, I think this is actually it's a great story because so previously we talked about with the theme. There seems to be a lot of themes about you know, connection here, right? With your previous contacts. So one connection I made with the semiconductor industry company, which was the first company I had out of university. I stayed in touch with this fellow, and he ended up working at Workday, and he was telling me how great it was. And this is over like a 20-year span that we'd stayed in touch, right? So it's a long time. He said, yeah, this is really great. So I went to a recruiting event, and it looked good, but again, I was scared of large companies because of the whole culture thing. I went off and joined another startup instead, which was a total disaster. So this is just before, that was just before Workday. The company culture was very toxic. I didn't really do my research into the company culture or how the company was managed or financed. And that's on me. And so that didn't last very long. Me and a lot of the guys moved on very quickly, and all of a sudden, I was out there looking, and again, so my friend Mike, he said, "Well, you want to give Workday a try?" I wasn't sure, but I did. So it's like you can never really. So that's how I made the leap, and I really wasn't sure about it, but it was only through connection that I did, and it's actually been the best thing ever for me. I should have done it sooner. So yeah. Anyway, when Workday starts hiring again, if you do see jobs from Workday, I encourage you to apply. Not that I'm trying to steal all of WordPress employees. So.
Sure. Thank you. So yeah, coming to the next segment, like you were on like hiring end as well for the developers, right? So what are your suggestions for not just suggestions? The first step is like, what do you look in for the junior developers when you're hiring? What do you search for in them?
Yeah. So you know, I think passion, good social skills, and ability to learn quickly. So by the time that you get to us, like most of the larger technology companies have a multi-stage interview process. So for me, it was like 5 stages of interview. So the first is a pre-screener. The second is one with the manager. And then it's the technical interview. So by the time you get to me, and I don't do the pre-screener, or obviously I'm not a manager, by the time you get to me, the technical, we'll already know that that you are qualified and you've got all the potential to be a good engineer. So what we're trying to determine is, could we see ourselves working with you? So the technical interviews do involve a tech test of some kind, usually done with HackerRank. So one tip would be to get used to the, obviously you can't predict what we're going to ask, but you can get used to the format of how HackerRank works. And there's a bunch of free tests that you can do. The tests actually that Workday does are not actually that difficult. So it's more about, I think it's more about, it's hard to write some code with everybody watching you on Zoom, right? It's really hard. So you maybe do a little bit of practice, certainly practice by yourself. And if you had friends that would be willing to pretend to interview you, that could really help, because often it's a battle more against your nerves than anything else.
Cool. That covers the suggestions as well. So let's get into the things you search for when you're hiring senior developers.
Yeah. So this is the same. So obviously we still want you to have the passion and the good social skills. Like you could be the best, you could be the best developer ever. But if you can only work by yourself and you're like kind of obnoxious, it's not going to work, right? So, but I think for the seniors, adding leadership, mentoring, and what we call at Workday being a T-shaped person, right? So here's a T, and what that means is you have a huge breadth of experience. So all the different languages, technologies, experience, design patterns. This is your T. In a few areas, so you're really broad, but in a few areas, you're also really deep. So it might be languages, so you're deep. Languages, maybe it's a bit of DevOps and CI, something like that, right? But you've got a few of those. I don't think anybody, we'd like to be a square person, right? Where we're as bright as we are deep, but this, I don't know. I've never met anybody like that. So we look for those sorts of people. Somebody that's in their leadership skills. So leadership isn't about telling people what to do. We have the concept of a servant leader. So the leader, rather than directing people, they remove the obstacles and help their team achieve what they need to achieve. So they use their connections. If somebody on your team is having a problem, you don't jump in there and solve the problem. That's not leadership. You work with them to solve the problem. You connect them to the solution. And if there are any obstacles, you remove those. So you're like more of a as a senior, actually more of a servant, if you will, to the juniors, right? A servant leader. And that way we sort of elevate everyone. Everyone learns a lot more. Yeah.
Great. Awesome. So coming back to the hackathon, being the one of the judges here, so what do you expect from the participants or the projects here? So yeah, what are you looking for?
Sure. Yeah. I would say for firstly, like something truly useful that can add that has potential to add revenue to Requestly as a company, and that your team clearly had fun building, right? So it was something that's got tremendous value for the business, and you had fun building it. That would be what I would look for. Maybe something to lighten the mood. Don't feel you can add some memes, music, costumes, right? I don't know if is Halloween at all a thing in India at all?
It's happening. It's not everywhere. It's definitely in the metropolitan cities.
Gotcha.
But yeah, we got that culture here. The schools and colleges, we are into that yet.
Right. I wasn't sure because Halloween is kind of a North American thing. It's not really that big in Europe overall. So anyway, Halloween's on Monday, right? So if you want to dress up, that's cool, right? So and they often encourage that at Workday as well. So it's the demos that we have are very lighthearted. Yeah.
Cool, cool, cool. So any specific suggestions? I know you listed a few, but like anything in particular? I know it, I'm asking because this is like a time constraint thing they're going on, and they have like a lot of things to think of, like their idea, and like maybe few questions like how good is this going to be? Is there any suggestion to, control that and like work on be more productive and not just stuck with the thinking?
Oh, like how to come up with the ideas in the first place, like.
The ideas, they already started building. It's just the second part. I am as soon as they get into the building, there is definitely, I think, that one point where most of the people will be thinking like, is it like good enough? And they have a stuck moment. So
Oh,
what to,
yeah,
how do you
great
suggest to
question.
deal with that?
Yeah, so yeah, like I've seen a lot of demos catch on fire and go wrong, and that's actually expected, right? I'd be surprised if that doesn't happen with any of your demos, and if it doesn't, if none of the demos have any problems and they all work perfectly, yeah, it works on my machine exactly, yeah. Yeah, if all of your demos work perfectly and you don't have any problems, there's two possible solutions. That either you're like the best set of developers I have ever encountered, sort of like godlike humans, right? Or you didn't take enough risk, right? In your solution. So I think that, like if it's a really epic but risky demo and it fails in a few areas, it can be a success depending on how you handle it, right? And and I would probably judge it more successful than, a completely successful but unambitious demo. So think about how you'd handle it if one particular spot blew up. Have some jokes ready, right? Sort of like, look, there's Superman, right? Distraction or something. I don't know, right? Or my microphone's not working. I don't know. That's fine, right? But yeah, don't be afraid to take risks, and expect failure. And failure is not a bad thing as long as you learn from it. That's the whole purpose of a hackathon, is to actually learn from it. So, and that's how we learn.
Yeah, taking risks, I think at the end of the day will have the brownie points than playing it safe. So yeah, yeah. Got it. So one generic question to end this with. So how to like stay updated in this continuously changing, evolving front end tooling? So there are enormous things and tools that keep on updating. Like how do you suggest on being updated on them?
Yeah, yeah. This is a real challenge for us because I mean, like one thing about I guess one thing I don't like about the whole front end landscape is that there's no, especially if it's specifically about TypeScript and JavaScript, there's no like one path. There's so many paths you could take, and there's so many different, because there's so many different ways of doing it. How do you stay up to date? You could pick something and it ends up not being particularly successful in the long run. So it's almost like a question of hedging your bets. So one thing that I find useful to see the popularity of some of the frameworks is these Stack Overflow language and frameworks rankings that they do every year, I believe. That can help you focus in areas where you should learn, and see which is on the decline and which is on the ascent. The other thing, which is perhaps harder at smaller companies but easier at larger ones, is try to maybe volunteer. In the Workday, we have the concept of doing a gig. So a gig is when you say, oh, I'd just like to temporarily join another team. And sometimes you'll be requested for a gig, other times you can request one. And and this applies to any technology, not just front end stuff, but you will then go and lurch on the other team and pick one for technology that you want to learn. So you'll see how the other teams are doing it. And because it's real and it's not just like made up something you watched on Udemy or YouTube or something, you actually get a real sense for how successful it could be. So yeah, exposing yourself to a variety, try not to get stuck in a rut, and sort of look at trends in the industry.
The best way to learn is by doing it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just do it, right?
Yeah, great. Awesome. Thank you for all the insights. Now we are actually like exhausted our time, but can you spare like 10 more minutes so that our audience can ask their questions and your insights on their ideas?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Okay, guys, this is the time. You can raise your hand and go one by one. Just remember, any question is not a small question, so everyone can ask their doubts. Yeah, Harshna, please go ahead.
Good morning, Ben.
Hey.
I wanted to ask a non-tech question, and it's like you have a pretty huge journey, right? And tech people tend to ignore their health and they work like extra hours or overwork. So, have you ever faced such a scenario? And do you like follow any sort of schedule which helps you like balance your health and your work?
Yeah. Yeah, so because I'm more of a morning person, I tend to start early in the morning to get my productive time, and then I do like a walk every day, instead of lunch, or have like a really short lunch and then do a walk. Even if I'm not having, I would go on a walk regardless if I'm having problems or not, right? So it's not just to solve problems, and I find that's generally good for health. I think at the end of the day, going to the gym as well, your physical health is really important. And it's actually, strangely enough, a lot of times if you're at the gym or in the shower, there's actually a lot of productive thinking that goes on in there. So yeah. So don't think that your own time that may not be apparently productive isn't, because it probably is. If you have a passion for the industry, you'll always be thinking, right? So I find that works really well for me. I try not to put excessive hours in unless there's a real push or some crisis, because it's not. I tend to find that it's not sustainable in the long run, at least for me.
That answers my question. Thank you.
Great. Anyone else, guys? Let me check the chat.
It's getting super late for you guys. It's like what, 9:30 at night? Is that right?
Yeah, it's 9:05. Yes.
No, so tell me, what part of India are you in?
I am in Andhra Pradesh. The time zones here are the same for the whole country, so
Gotcha.
it's the same.
That seems unusual because it's such a huge country from east to west. It seems unusual that you'd have just the one time zone. Yeah.
I think the area wise, it's not like huge, but population wise, yeah, definitely. Maybe that's the reason maybe people being like a huge population in each state, when we refer to that we are from each state, that gives an impression that we live in different zones as well, like time zones as well. But
Sure.
yeah, this is India is like runs only on one time zone.
Oh, we got somewhere in Toronto as well. Right on.
Cool. Someone said they want to ask a question. Rafiq Sayadia, you can ask your question. You there? Syed. Okay. Okay, he might be asking in the chat. Okay. Cool.
I know there's some towns in North America, some places where the town is cut in half by the time zone. So it's like an hour difference. So the pub closes on one side, you just walk across the street and it's all open.
Nice. That's so convenient and that's so nice. Yeah. That's so nice. Yeah. It's early morning for you, right? I think it's
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
cool. Guys, if we don't have any more questions. Okay, we have 2 questions here. Ben, hope you can check in the chat.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's on how to approach for job offers in Canada. I recently moved here. Oh, wow, awesome.
Yeah. Well, so I can recommend the specifically for Workday. There is our Workday careers, which does allow you to narrow it down to Toronto. And we do have a number of people that we do have a Toronto office and a strong East Coast presence. In fact, somebody, an engineer that we have on our team, he was hired in Toronto recently, and he recently moved to BC. We didn't ask him to move, so we're fairly flexible. If if you're a good fit for our team and you're willing to adjust hours, then you don't necessarily have to move that way. In terms of I'm not quite sure. I mean, the Toronto and Waterloo area has got to be like probably more robust than even Vancouver. I think for job market, it's a kind of a bad time right now for everybody. Workday does have a hiring freeze, but we are replacing people that do move on. So maybe just definitely keep your eye on that, and reach out to your network of connections as well. Really important.
Cool.
How do I come up with ideas? You're building side projects. Yeah. A lot of times, so I guess there's kind of one way that I come up with it. It's often that we work on something and there's a particular itch to scratch in development. It could be a small tool that is just really difficult, really difficult to do. So like, for example, Requestly is actually a good example. So one of our developers came up with a very primitive version of a Requestly-like tool, and it was a Chrome plugin in it. And she came up with this thing because it was an awkward problem for us to solve, developing locally and needing to redirect. So she came up with this thing, and then we switched to Requestly because we found that it was obviously the far more developed solution. So often, sort of look for like hotspots or sore areas in your development flow and try to build something to solve that. And it may or may not be something specific for your company. And if it isn't, then if your contract and confidentiality allows, do put it for everybody on GitHub to use. So yeah, typically I just sort of look for little problem spots, and that could be a variety of stuff, from development flow to front end to whatever. Something that nobody else can be bothered to automate, right? And and it might be a little bit challenging, but if you save 10 developers 30 minutes a week, that's probably a lot of money, right? So
Hope that answers your question, Syed. Yeah, awesome. So guys, anyone have any more questions? We can wrap this up if not.
yeah, so I'm really excited to see your demos tomorrow. So how many teams are there?
We are looking at 25 now.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, a few of them are working on solo, but yeah, there are 2-member teams. altogether it's 25. Yeah,
Okay, okay.
looking forward to that.
Maybe if you could send me a list of the teams, maybe if I don't know if they've all got names or something, that would be really good, just so I can make sure that I've got the administration to track as we go. Yeah.
Definitely.
So it'll be and then the demos will be like, will they be time limited and with slides, or like what's the format?
Yeah, so the first thing is for finalists, they need to submit their project, which is like at 1 p.m. IST tomorrow. They'll need to present, not present, they will need to give us the project link they have worked on and a 1 to 2 minute Loom video demo on how their prototype works. So that is for finalizing people for the final round. That they need to submit by 1 p.m. and the finalists will be announced at 5 p.m. IST tomorrow on Twitter Spaces. And then the extra step added there is to create a PPT, and we will be giving them a template for that, just to make sure they answer our questions, the things actually need. And the PPT is just to give them a structure while they're presenting. But the huge part we are looking at is the video demo, 1 to 2 minutes demo, which we'll be getting from every participant, not just the finalists, but from every participant. So yeah, we are very much looking forward to those videos. That's
Very cool.
process. Yeah.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing those.
Awesome. So we can wrap this up, Ben. Thank you so much for joining once again. You're in the early morning for you. Yeah, it means a lot. And we got like really cool insights and a little bit of different culture stuff as well, because things work differently at different places, right? So yeah, that's a great thing as well. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow morning for me.
Yeah.
All right, have a good evening, guys. Cheers then.
Yeah. So we are going to have a small workshop right now regarding the Loom video creation. You can drop off. We'll just continue for 10 more minutes. Just want to let you know.
All right.
Yeah.
Talk to you later. Bye.
Yeah. Bye. Take care. Hey guys. Let's get back. I'll stop okay, we need to record this as well. I'm dropping the link of the landing page because that's where I added the guidelines. Oh, 1 second. Oh. Okay, my Loom just got kicked in. Sorry, just a minute. Yeah, it's just a link to the landing page. I have added the guidelines to our to create the video. I'm sharing my screen as well. So here it is, the Loom video. So what we are looking at for the things to be present in the video, it is just a 1 to 2 minutes video we are requesting. It's definitely fine if it goes to 3 minutes, that's totally fine. But the basic is to know the idea of your whole project, and I think 2 minutes is like ideal. These are the two things we are looking at: the context, why you're building the product, the problem you got into, and the solution you got for that. And the second is the demo of the product, like how it works. So even you can if you are into the finalists, and when you are presenting your demo, you can directly show it from the tab here as well. But in case if things go wrong, you can use this video. So please keep that in your mind while you are doing the video. Everything is important, so try to cover as much as possible. Now coming to like how to use the Loom to create the video. This is the Chrome extension. As soon as you click this link, they'll ask, you'll see this. You need to add this to create the video. it'll make things easier. So as soon as you add this to the extension, you will see an extension here actually. Yeah, so here. So clicking on this will give you an option to create a video on whatever tab you are in. This makes things a lot easier.
Saiti,
Yeah.
you're not sharing your whole screen.
Oh, okay. 1 second. This says I'm showing my whole screen.
We can only see your browser window right now.
Can you see this now?
Yeah, we can see your Chrome. Are you in your Chrome right now, like your browser?
1 second. Let me connect again. Yeah, can you see this now?
Yes, we can see everything now.
Yeah. So as soon as you add this to the Chrome, the extension will be here, and you can click on this and immediately it will start giving you the options with one-click access. This I haven't set it up yet because I want to show it to you guys. So this is signing up process. This is a different mail ID, so it's not signed up here. So this is the signing up process. It'll ask few basic questions. You can go with personal. I'll go for work. This is the basic stuff. I'll just fill it up with anything. This is there in app as well, but Chrome extension works pretty fine. So that's enough. So here, record a loom. It's you can see I have attached here the resources to go back and check things. This is the YouTube video I could find the latest one and to the point and different cases and scenarios as well. So this will summarize like everything, and this is by a different person, influencer, and this is the latest one actually. The other one is the official one I'm talking about. So yeah, these two resources should help you throughout. If you have any questions, you can ask in the Telegram. So here it is, and I'll say record a loom. It'll ask for permissions because this is the first time I'm doing it. For the different my account, it's like everything set up. So here you have the questions. So you want the screen only or the cam only. So these are the options you can set. If anyone is not comfortable presenting with their face showing up, you can just go with the screen only. But we insist you have this experience of you see talking to yourself here as well. That makes like a lot of difference, and it gives a huge context and more closure to the person who is watching it. So we insist on being the video on. So these are the settings, and yeah, as soon as this is set, you can just start recording. Yeah, these are some basic settings that to unmute yourself and see it's asking for the details. I hope you guys can see this. Yeah, I need to update few settings here, but yeah, that's easy. That's pretty much it. If you guys have any questions, please do ask in the Telegram. These are the basic things that needs to be done, and we have covered that. And the plus point is you can edit your videos here as well. You don't you don't need to have to go to the third party app. You can definitely edit your videos here itself. That is covered in this video. The link I shared here, this one, that is covered here. So you don't have to be stressed of like taking it in one go. You don't have to definitely do that. You can take different takes. Yeah, just try it out. It's like really great thing. Once you get into that, you will prefer this over anything. So yeah, I'm going to the check box, chat box. Sorry. Yeah, asking should it be just screen recording and camera? We insist on both of them. It's just letting you know once again, it gives a lot of closure and like the context, who is talking, and you definitely know talking to a unknown person is one thing, and talking to a person without having an eye contact is like a different thing. So eye contact matters a lot. So try recording while you're watching to the camera. That really helps a lot. I think that is covered in this video as well by the official team member of the Loom. It plays a huge role. So we insist on recording with both camera and the screen. If you guys have any questions, please do ask now. Then we can wrap it up. No questions, I see. Yeah, so I updated the things in the landing page. So you should be able to see on your tabs as well. That is pretty much it for now then. We'll be regarding the submissions. I'll share you the submission link tomorrow morning, just a submission form. You can add your details there, just your contact details and the project link and the Loom link. That's it. And sharing the Loom, you just have to just share the link. You will it's guided there. You will have to just share the link. You don't have to like download any video or anything. That is the thing we love with the Loom. You just need to like share the link directly. By what time you need to submit the video? It's by 1 p.m. By 1 p.m. We'll stop taking in the submissions. So it's part of the form. So as I'm telling you, it's as you are adding the link to the project, it's the same as like adding the link to the Loom to that form. Great. I think we are done with the questions then. Let's wrap it up. Harshna, thank you. Glad it helped all of you guys. Hope it helped all of you guys. So yeah. Off in the recording now.